So if you could all just hit the continue button, that would be fantastic. So the new Colombo Plan High Achievers Scholarship Program has been around for a little while. It started in 2014, and since 2015 we've actually had 24 NCP scholars from UTAS successfully be awarded. It's a signature initiative of the Australian Government which aims to lift knowledge of Australian students in the Indo-Pacific by seeing them undertake study and internships and mentorships within the 40 eligible countries. The scholarship ranges between 40 and 69,000, I think is the most that you're able to do, and that covers a range of programs or benefits under that, including tuition, health insurance, travel insurance. You've got monthly stipends to help students live in country, and we'll go through that a little bit more. Each year the university, or each university in Australia, is able to nominate 10 students forward as part of the process. So we're allowed to nominate 10 students only across the entire institution, and they go forward with 10 from each of the other universities. So we expect around 120 scholarships Australia-wide to be nominated under the 2022 application round. So the new Colombo Plan program, hopefully you've heard of it before. There are two distinct programs. There's the mobility program, and that's where academics develop short-term programs to send groups of students overseas. And that is a individual scholarship, usually around $3,000. There's a semester-based program at $7,000, but the one that we're talking about today is the High Achievers Scholarship Program, and as we'll go through later, that is for a student to travel solo to an institute anywhere within the Indo-Pacific region for up to between $45,000 and $70,000. So of our 24 scholars that we've had previously, we just wanted to flick through the awardees for last year. Obviously, unfortunately, due to COVID, these scholars will be departing hopefully from the beginning of June 2022 onwards, when we hope the borders will be opening up. But here is just some quotes from students who are travelling. So of our 24 students, we've had some really exciting locations that they've been to previously, studying internships in one country and a semester in another country. So there's some really exciting opportunities that we'll go through. We'll provide this presentation to you obviously afterwards, and you can have a little look through by yourselves. Of the eligible locations that you can go to under the NCP, these are the 40. We have partner institutes in China, Hong Kong, Japan, Malaysia and Singapore, of which you're of course eligible to apply under the exchange program. But if you wanted to, you can actually choose a location from any of the other places that are listed. It's just a study abroad. Obviously with COVID, anything that has a DFAT rating of do not travel, unfortunately, students aren't able to put that down as a preference at the moment. But we're hoping as things begin to open up that they will actually be able to put in an application for those. So, sorry, I worded that a bit incorrectly. I could hear you through your headphones. So you can apply for a place at the moment that is listed as a DFAT warning, do not travel. But if it was a DFAT do not travel warning before COVID was announced, then it's recommended that you do not apply to that country, if that makes sense. Does that make sense, Patrick? Excellent. So just quickly, to be eligible to apply for this scholarship, the first of all is obviously that you need to put in your expression of interest, and those expression of interest, 10 students will be nominated by UTAS. To be eligible to put in an expression of interest, you need to be an Australian citizen, you need to be enrolled in an undergraduate degree or honours degree at UTAS at the moment. You need to be a citizen or a permanent, you're not allowed to be, sorry, a citizen or a permanent resident of the country that you intend to apply to. You need to be between 18 and 30, and most crucially, you need to have achieved a minimum GPA of 70 or 6, GPA of 6 or a grade average of 70. And you need to actually maintain that throughout your entire program. So if you go on to be awarded an NCP scholarship, it's important that your grade stays that way all the way through the application process. You can't previously have received an NCP scholarship, which, looking at all of your names, I don't think any of you have, but you can in the future apply for an NCP grant for a short-term program or a semester program. So within the life of any UTAS domestic students degree at UTAS, you can actually get multiple NCP scholarships, but you can only get one of each. So you could participate in a short-term program for $3,000. You could go on a semester exchange and get $7,000, and you can also apply for this program. And it's also important that you've not been an employee of the branch at DFAT that administers NCP. So the scholarship benefits itself, you can go through this, it's a bit wordy at the moment, but essentially you get a study component of up to $10,000 for a semester or $6,666 for a trimester. So you could apply to any institution within those 40 eligible countries, and the Australian government would actually pay your tuition for the period that you were at that institution unless you went under the exchange program. So that's those 5 designated countries that we spoke about previously where we have exchange partnerships. If you decide to go on a study abroad and have the government pay your tuition, it means that you won't be paying HECS whilst for your program in Australia. So it is an independent study abroad. You can have access to language training scholarships, so up to $10,000 for full-time study. And that's for language training of 1 month up to 6 months, or you could do full-time study of 1 month or less. So 10,000 versus 1,500 for language training, or part-time training language of 1,500. The really great thing about this scholarship is that you could decide to go on a full semester of exchange or study abroad to an institute, and then you could stay on and do 6 months of full-time language training if you wanted. It's a really great way to get a variety of experience essentially. So you could do language training, you could do a semester of study abroad, and then you could also do an internship or a mentorship and unlock these different scholarship bursaries that you have to pay for your way. As mentioned before, you've got a travel allowance of $2,500 that's paid to get you to and from the country, an establishment allowance to set you up in the country, and then you get a monthly stipend of around $2,500. These are specific to the country that you choose. So if you go to Hong Kong, the amount that you get as a monthly stipend might be slightly different to that you would get in Indonesia. So they kind of vary depending upon the country that you're going to. There is a mental health allowance just to cover anything professional services that you might need, or assistance with a psychologist or social work whilst you're in country. There's other benefits to the university, to the scholarship as well. And that includes your full insurance whilst you're overseas, and allocation of a case manager, which is actually a really exciting prospect. So if you go on to be nominated and you receive an NCP scholarship, you get a designated case manager, and they help you essentially with background information. So this program's been running for a number of years now. So there'll be specific information that you can gain access to for just studying in Malaysia, and that will be accommodation options, or good places to do an internship, or opportunities for mentorships within workplaces. So the case manager is really crucial for helping you kind of unlock the best parts of your NCP scholarship. And there's also private sector sponsorship. This is actually a new area of the NCP, and if you go on to be in the top 10 of those applications that are put forward, we'll hold an extra information session that will go through a lot of those things around private sector sponsorship, finding an internship and identifying mentorship opportunities. So the study component itself, so you can undertake a full-time study program at university in any of the eligible locations. You must be receiving credit for that back to UTAS, and that is part of the most kind of crucial process of applying for the NCP, is making sure that you identify a host that is compatible with your current degree. We'll go through that a little bit more. You can study up to 1 year on the NCP scholarship, so no longer than 19 months. So you could do a full year of study at an institution, and then you might take up the option of doing 3 or 4 or 6 months of language, but the whole program can't be more than 19 months. The semester can be coursework or research based, and it is preferable that you go to one of our exchange partners, but it isn't mandatory. We'll go through that a little bit as well. So this is just a little bit of a breakdown of what an internship is, what a mentorship is, language training, and other types of community engagement and advocacy. You can read through this at your own leisure, just for anyone that's a bit iffy about the differences between an internship and mentorship program. There's currently up on the website an expression of interest application, and as part of that, there's a number of fields that you need to apply, to fill out. But the most important thing is actually the responses to the selection criteria. So the 4 selection criteria that are in the expression of application form are the same. That is the major application that will eventually be submitted to the Australian Government's portal. And Gillian Harris is here to go through those with us. There are a few resources that we recommend that you go ahead and read as part of your application that will certainly make applying a lot easier. So the scholarship guidelines, there are 37 pages, so it is quite extensive, but it is a really good opportunity to have a really in-depth look at what you can do, where you can do it, the scholarships and resources that are available to you. Are all listed in there. The advice to applicants for 2022 takes into account really good responses that students have used previously for the criteria, and also any changes from previous rounds, which you probably aren't necessarily aware of, but it's good to kind of read through those and understand them. There's a copy of the NCP scholarship agreement. That's not so much necessary at the moment, but it is good to kind of have a look at the privacy statement and those types of things, that if you go on to be a scholar, what you'll be asked to agree to. And the expression of interest form is just essentially a worksheet where you can go in, start to type away information on how you might respond to the selection criteria before you copy and paste it into the expression of interest application form online. So the overall application process, unfortunately, the timelines for this year are quite tight. So I just want to give you an overview of all of the application process. So it starts with submitting an expression of interest form with those responses to the selection criteria. All of those applications are then shortlisted by a panel of staff from each of the colleges. So we sit down, we go through all the selection criteria, work out, how you responded, blah, blah, blah. Those 10 students are then, we let everybody know, and the 10 students that have been nominated are put forward, and they get a link that they can then submit their application online. Within the kind of the part from where they're nominated to where you submit your final application, we loop in Gillian Harris, and she is the expert on responding to selection criteria. Gillian will tell you more about herself in a minute, but she's been crucial in the last couple of years, working really closely with scholars and making sure that she can unlock the best parts of their selection criteria. So once students are nominated, we have to very quickly apply for a national police check. We then have to narrow down the country and destination that you and preferred partner that you would like to go to. One of the most important things in a very tight turnaround time for applications is thinking about who you would have as a referee for your application. So you need to nominate 2 referees. Gillian will probably talk about that a little bit more in the future, in the next couple of slides. But Gillian, do we generally go for an academic one and then a community-based one if we can?
At least one academic one, Marnie, and I'd be jumping on them as soon as you can, because sometimes their workload prevents them from this quick turnaround time as well. Yeah.
So, Frowen, a referee is somebody who can essentially respond to kind of similar criteria about you. So it's kind of like a character reference. So they would say how they knew you, how long they had known you for, and talk about your best qualities essentially. And so, yeah, Gillian, you might be able to talk a little bit more about how it is to choose a referee in the next section. We in Student Mobility will actually look after your academic transcript, which we order, maintain, make sure that you maintain your GPA, and then the final stage is obviously putting in your big application to the Australian Government through the portal. And once again, there's just the links to help you apply to selection criteria. So the timelines, we do have very short timelines this year. So the expressions of interest close on the 26th of July. On the 28th of July, we will shortlist applicants and shortly thereafter let everybody know the outcome of that. By the 3rd of August, students will be nominated into the portal, and you'll gain access to a link in which you can start putting in your completed selection criteria. with everything having to be due online by the 23rd of August. So within that time, we will hold a workshop with Gillian again, just responding to selection criteria to make sure that every student is aware of, the best ways to respond and things like that, and to go over your applications on an individual level, hopefully. September, the Department of Education shortlists all of the applications. In September, October, the interviews are conducted. Normally around this stage, we loop in previous scholars. So before interviews are conducted, depending upon how things are going with COVID, students are normally flown to Canberra for their interview. If COVID is, and usually for Tasmanian students, it is an overnight stay in Canberra. And a lot of students have questions about, how to respond in an interview, what to wear to an interview and those kinds of questions. And that's usually where we loop in previous scholars in a session where they can discuss, how they approach things and how their interview was and what the questions were that they were asked, those types of things. So interviews are in September, October, and in November, December is when the scholars are announced formally. Hopefully, if everything goes all right with the announcement, they actually do normally fly scholars over to Canberra as well for a bit of a shindig, which is always nice. So hopefully everything goes okay with borders. That was a bit of a quick fly through. Just before we go to the next section, do we have any questions? Paul?
Yeah, when you mentioned the maintaining of the grade point average and such when you're doing the application and the whole process, say, because I know you the ability to defer travel because of COVID, if you applied for the 2022 scholarship but then didn't travel to 2024, but then received it by the end of this year, the actual scholarship, would you still be required through all of 2023 to maintain the grades?
I suspect so, yes.
Yep, that's what I thought so. Thank you.
No worries. Was there any other hands up, Veronica?
Yeah, I just have a question. I've looked at a few partnered universities and have struggled to find one specific for my course because I'm doing paramedicine. I did have Patrick respond to say that that's a bit difficult because that course structure it's a fast track degree and there's a lot of content. So I guess who's the best person to speak to in regards to that? Would that be my school?
Yeah, Veronica, that would be your senior course information officer. I do have to tell you that unfortunately the majority of fast track programs historically haven't been able to apply for the NCP just because it does blow out your program timelines because you have very close kind of, quick timelines for your semesters or you've got shortened semesters. So by all means, we might send you a name, get in contact with you after this, if that's okay, and we'll get you in contact with somebody in your college who can let you know whether or not your program actually would be eligible.
Yeah, thank you, Marnie.
No worries. I think there's another question. How many people out of the 10 UTAS students end up going? So historically at UTAS, we have always had quite a good success rate. So out of the 10 students that we've nominated, at least 7 or 8 of them are interviewed every year. And of those that have been awarded, I think the most we had one year was 6, was it, Gillian?
Yeah, I think that was about right.
Yeah, and historically out of the 24, I think we've only ever had 2 withdraw before they actually went on the program, not including obviously the 4 that were awarded last year that have had to defer those scholarships until next year. Does that answer your question? Excellent. Does DFAT have a target number of scholars each year? Yes, 120. Scholars are awarded, and they do tend to, with their awarding of scholars, they do tend to have a good spread. So I think within any one country, or one area, they're only really allowed to have a certain number of students. So if it was Kuala Lumpur, they might only award 4 scholars for Kuala Lumpur for that region. So it is really good to kind of have a think about where it is that you might want to put in your application, and certainly taking into account the DFAT ratings of do not travel that were there prior to COVID, and avoid those areas. Any other questions? Oh, Dylan?
Yeah, just had one. I was just wondering, how can I find what should I search for looking for institutions that are good for my particular course?
I will show you in 2 seconds. Excellent question. I'll come back to you in a second, Dylan.
Thank you.
Paul?
Yeah, I was just wondering, as you said, there's only 4 scholars going to each location. Does that mean if you're going to a location that's likely to be popular, you're putting yourself at a distinct disadvantage?
Kind of, but it depends upon, so I'll go through in a second. It depends upon how really engaged you are with that particular location. So I've got a few things that I'll go through in a second. But what we do know, and what Gillian will probably talk about in a second, is the more lay work you do, the more you research that area, the more information you know about the institute and get excited about internship opportunities. It comes through in your application, and the stronger your responses to the criteria are. So if you really have your heart keen on going to Hokkaido because of its amazing marine science program, the more information that you use and feed into your application makes it stronger. So whilst there might be more competition, it really depends upon how much of the lay work you've done before to make that really kind of sing in your application, if that makes sense.
So as long as you can justify why you want to go to said location and said university, that's what you're looking for, I guess. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Nope. If we go to the next page, unfortunately, this isn't showing my notes. So responding to the selection criteria. Oh, thank you, Patrick. Hold that thought. So like I was saying before, So you're going to, as part of your expression of interest, you're going to be asked to respond to 4 selection criteria. And kind of Dylan, this is what we were touching on before. There's a couple of things that will really make your application sing if you do the work beforehand. So go to the next page, Patrick. This is the kind of questions that we want you to be asking yourself. So which university would I like to go to attend? So we want you to think about, before you start doing your selection criteria, where it is that you want to go. Does the particular location have the course, a course that is compatible, that you think is going to be compatible with your degree? Are the courses taught in English? Unless you have a second language, there's no point applying to an institution that doesn't offer your program in English. And does the country align with what you are hoping to get out of your study experience? Yeah, it's really, really good to, I'll show you a couple of links, and when we send through the presentations, you can actually jump through and have a look at identifying an institution, and we'll show you how you can narrow it down to particular fields. But it's really good to think about, first of all, where it is that you want to go and why you want to go there, and then try and narrow down an institution, because the more research you put into it, the more excited you'll become. It'll come in your application. How long do you want to go for? So you're thinking about a semester or a year. How do you kind of add to that? So if you want to go to Singapore for a full year and then you want to do some sort of language training or an internship for 6 months afterwards, it's really good to think about all of these things before. And the experiences that you want. So an internship, a mentorship, language training. Do you want to do a combination of them both? I've completely lost my train of thought. Just as a kind of caveat, you can think about these things. So you might write a really amazing response to the selection criteria with everything based on Malaysia, and then you might be awarded a scholarship. They can change. So if for some reason your entire application might be based on going to University of Gadjah Mada in Indonesia, but in the end you actually end up going to Malaysia because of something else. So you can actually put in an application to vary scholarships in the future, and that can be as varied as the location, country, or the institution. You might drop an internship, you might change an internship. None of it actually has to be approved before you put in an application. It's really just like, if I have the opportunity to take this on, these are the things that I want to do, and this is why I'm excited about it. So in relation to finding an institution, these are the areas that we kind of recommend that you go and have a little look at. So our UTAS partners is listed on our website, and that goes through to each of the partner institutes. You can have a look at those ones. The Times Higher Education is, you're probably all aware it is, but it ranks universities across different regions, but in particular this link goes to Asia, and you can have a look at particular disciplines and subjects and then follow it back to the actual institution. So if you were studying, Pat, we might be able to link on that. Can we show them the, oh no, this one. So you can actually go and have a look at, specify actually which discipline it is that you want to go. So offering any subject and actually narrow down. So if you're a business student, you can go through and click on that and it will give you a list of institutes roughly within the region that we are going to be, hoping to put an application in for. And then you can work backwards and go to countries. And that will give you a list of institutions. And then it's really just kind of going through and having a look at the rankings, having a look at the websites. If you have any difficulties with identifying a host, please feel free to reach out to Patrick or I and we can help you find an institution. Teachers is a third-party provider that we partner with, and they do really interesting semester-based programs within Indonesia, and you can actually do an internship as part of your study. So if you're a bit short of looking, you're a bit short of finding a place, Teachers is also a really, really good one to have a little look at. And we've had a number of scholars go through with Teachers in the past. In relation to internship opportunities, the 10 students that go forward to be nominated, they actually get access to a portal in which it gives a whole range of access to businesses by country that students can then go in and identify internship and mentorship opportunities. Alternatively, we also have a list of third-party providers on our website that do offer internships in country and virtually that you're able to identify by country. So if you're thinking about doing an internship in Japan, you could go to one of our third-party providers and the Australian government would pay your tuition to participate in that program. Once again, internships and mentorships and study components don't have to be organised before you go. So it's really just this is what I would like to do. And another thing that's really worth looking at is at the bottom of this page, the NCP scholars across Australian universities. If you go to that link, it has a link to all of the NCP scholars who have been awarded previously. And so if you just Control F, you can actually have a look at, say, where University of Melbourne NCP scholars have gone previously who studied business or marine science, and it will give you a list of universities. So if you're really kind of scouting around to see where other NCP scholars have gone, this link is a really good one to have a look at what other students have done previously. What I really like about going through other NCP scholars' experiences is that you can see that a lot of them might have done a semester in Japan, but they did an internship in Malaysia or vice versa. So you don't actually have to do all of your programs in one country. It can be in a secondary location. All right. No, expression of interest, the application tips. What's the next one? Because I think Gillian's about to start going through these. Oh, so the other thing, have a look at the tips on responding to the selection criteria, but the other thing to think about when you are going to do your selection criteria is actually to keep in mind the NCP strategic objectives of the NCP. So make sure that when you're responding to selection criteria, you have these in the back of your mind and you really know them. And I'm going to leave it there and hand you over to Gillian, who'll be able to go through a little bit more.
Thanks, Marnie. Hello, thanks, Marnie. So there are only 4 questions for the selection criteria, but having said that, selection criteria is an evil beast and does take some time to work through. Now, the first thing I want you to know and drill into you is that there is a 300 word count per question, okay? So that will be buried well and truly within those guidelines that Marnie mentioned. It's very difficult to find any information about the word count, but I can safely tell you that it's 300 words per selection criteria. So these are the 4 questions, and they are equally weighted now. So academic excellence at tertiary level is pretty easy to answer. Leadership and engagement in the community. This program is very much about what you give back to the community and what you, oh, sorry, Marnie, you've gone to a different slide there. It's very much about what you are able to give back to the community, and any leadership that you may have been involved in. And that could be at a local level, it could be on a virtual level, it could be on a national level. So that's quite highly weighted. Adaptability, sorry, go on.
I'll just say, Gillian, in relation to the leadership and engagement, would it be fair to say that previous applicants have always faltered a little bit on this selection criteria? So it's not until they start to have conversations, a lot of the time with you, that they begin to actually realise that they do have these skills and they do have these experiences. So remember, you know, volunteering with schools or sporting events, a lot of
local
these things.
Firefighters, you know, coaching you know, a junior soccer team, anything like that, or it could be something more formal. But there is a great deal of importance placed on leadership and engagement. The next one is adaptability and resilience. Now, this program welcomes applicants who have disability and ongoing health conditions, and indeed we've had recently successful applicant from someone who lives with dyslexia, and so I really think that don't exclude yourself. They really, the feds really like to hear from you if you've got a disability, ongoing health condition. So adaptability and resilience can also be towards family situation. It could be challenges faced with rural students. So for example, last year I worked with a student who during her high school years, she travelled 2 hours per day for her high school, then had to move for a year 11 and 12. I mean, some of you might have done that. Some of you have changed countries to be here to study. This all evidences adaptability and resilience, okay? So the students I worked with last year had all sorts of different examples. And if you think about it, you probably take for granted your adaptability and resilience. But when you think about what's happened in your life so far, if everyone refers to COVID as adaptability and resilience, that'd be a bit boring. But, you know, there are lots of underlying factors as well that strengthens our adaptability and resilience. And then the ability to contribute to the NCP strategic objective with those goals in mind. So you might want to start your statement by, in alignment with the strategic goals, blah, blah. Think about the unique skill set that you have, the unique study program that you have done, and what you can contribute as ambassadors for this program whilst you're in country and also when you come back. Okay, so last year we had one student who was a pretty good musician and one student who was an artist. And the success I think we had last year was because in this section we were specific about what those students were going to do while they were in their country of choice to enhance the NCP goals and to enhance the overall program, if you like. So think about what it is that you can contribute while you're there, but then also while you come back. So one student was going to be doing engaging the community, the local community in art classes from an Australian perspective while she was there, and then bring the art that she'd learned in that country back to Australia. And she talked about how that would contribute to the NCP goals. So they're your 4 questions. Now, I'm not sure what the other slides look like, Marnie, but, oh, here we go, cool. Selection criteria should be answered using the STAR method. So that's STAR stands for situation, task, action and response. So basically what that means is giving me an example, giving me a story start to end using an in-depth example. So it keeps you, following that STAR method keeps you on track, both on paper and in an interview. So that's another good one to have under your belt, that knowledge under your belt for interview situations if you do get to interview. But follow these tips, be clear and precise, make sure you follow that word count. I have got information on the STAR technique. If you, no doubt Marnie will have all of your email addresses so I can send that out.
Sorry, Gillian, I appear to have deleted that slide. Marnie, sorry people. We'll insert that back in and send it through.
Yeah, we'll insert that. Yeah, insert that. So 300 words, be precise, be concise, be in depth in terms of an example using that STAR method, and talk about what you feel you can bring to the NCP, not so much what you get from the experience, what you can offer the experience, and what you bring to an internship and study abroad. Students who have returned from this program, who have participated in the language component, have not regretted it, and those who haven't have regretted not doing it. So I recommend that you seriously look at the language component. So basically, Marnie, these slides go on to talk about the weighting of the selection criteria, but what I'd like to do is offer a group workshop next Thursday. I don't really mind what time. That's entirely, you can do a doodle poll and get back to me or something like that. But because I don't have capacity to see all of you individually, a workshop is the next best thing. By this time next week, or by Thursday next week, you may have started your application. And so it would be a preliminary workshop to work with you to get ready for this first round.
Does that sound good to everybody? Does anybody have a particular time that they would be happy for us to do another session to really look specifically at each of the criteria and making sure that we're all addressing them?
If it helps, I'm happy to do it after hours as well.
Early afternoon. Say 1 o'clock. How's everybody feeling about that?
Just depend on the day for me.
So it would be next Thursday because I've got appointments, students booked into appointments each day next week apart from Thursday. So Thursday's yours and the time is up to you.
Thursday anytime's perfect for me. Depends on everyone else.
How about Frauen has said, can we do it early afternoon? Would we like to do it 1 o'clock and we'll record the session and we can share it with anybody who's unable to attend? How about that? Excellent. Let's go with that.
1 p.m. Thursday.
1 p.m. and we'll set up another session, Pat, and we'll send it through to everybody.
And so what it will be is, now I can make it a on-campus. Oh, is everyone from the Hobart or are we all over the state?
I believe we're from all over the state, Gillian.
Okay, so we'll make it a Zoom workshop, but it will be interactive. So I'll work with you all to talk to you about your specific applications, and we can work the best way we can in a group setting.
Excellent. So in the meantime, everyone, if you have any questions about identifying a host, about different types of opportunities, about what would be a good, setup for your program. So just what Gillian was saying previously, when we've discussed NCP experiences with previous scholars, they have all said that the language component was really, really beneficial. You might think about doing a language program, a short language program prior to your study of semester, so your actual study component, and then you might do an internship afterwards. We have found that those students who've gone on to be awarded a scholarship have had a variety of experiences. So not just a semester of study at an institution overseas, but language components. So the more engaged you are, or the more you talk about being engaged in your application, the better your chances are. And then once again, just think about the fact that there are only a limited number of scholarships that can be awarded by region. But so if you want to identify a host or have any questions about hosts, about identifying internships or mentorships as part of your application beforehand, please feel free to contact Patrick and I. And any other questions? Do we have any other questions at the moment?
Yeah, just to clarify, so if we apply for this year, it's for semester 2 next year. Is that correct?
Yeah. Essentially, it's supposed to be for all of 2022, but realistically, it's unlikely that we'll be able to leave any time before June, July next year. So if you are in the later stages of your program, we know with COVID that students this year are stretching out their degrees as long as possible to try and fit in that semester. But if you are in the later stages of your degree, say second or third year, really have a think about whether or not you want to be applying for this scholarship.
So next year's application will be for 2023 then, will it? Or semester 1 or semester 2?
It can be any.
Yep. All right.
So as soon as the scholarship application lines are essentially the 1st of January, and then for 19 months after that. So we, in 2019, we had scholars that were, under the 2018 were still studying during 2019. So.
Yep. So easy, choose that.
So you just have to leave. You have to leave before the 31st of December, 2022.
Yep, too easy. Cheers.
So we could do this 6 months of the languages before the 1 year of whatever else we're doing?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, great.
As long as it's full-time. So it has to be full-time. Yes, there's a little bit more information about how you can set up your program in the guidelines and also in the slides if you flick back through, but you can do a combination of study first, then semester, or semester and then language and then internship, as long as it all fits into the 19 months. There's also some information in the scholarship guidelines about taking gaps and the parameters around having a gap in your program.
Does the language training Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Just wondering if there's a place we could actually just download all that information, the slides or the...
Yeah, so we'll send through the presentation, and then on the Student Mobility website is all of the links and everything as well. So the Student Mobility website essentially has this presentation on it as well with all of the links that you can download yourself, but we'll send through too.
Oh, thanks for that.
No worries.
Does the language training have to count towards electives, or can that just be outside of university?
No, it has to count back to electives.
Electives, yeah, too easy.
Well, actually, unless you're in a language program, so if you're studying Indonesian, it could actually count back to your Indonesian subjects.
Yeah, tracking. But the study thing isn't just exclusive outside of uni.
No, you have to be getting credit for it. Good point, Ryan. Sorry, I should have mentioned that.
Marnie, can I just jump in and say that if students would like to email me their draft selection criteria prior to next Thursday, that would be okay. I'll try and get to it. I'm involved in resulting for a unit at the moment, but I should have some gaps in my diary next week.
Oh, Gillian, that's fantastic. So
Yeah.
we've got at the end of the slide, I think we actually skipped it, but we've got a key contacts slide, which will have
my
emails, on it,
emails
so
there.
students can email Gillian directly or Patrick and I.
Yep.
Paul and Veronica, your hands are up. Do you have any questions?
Pardon me, just regarding the when you'd actually travel for the scholarship, are they still permitting, from what I understand, the deferring of travel? So waiting to the early, not next year, but early the year after, sorry. If you applied in 2021 to be applied to be a 2022 scholar, but then didn't travel to 2023 because I know we're still up in the air with COVID and everything and what's going on.
Yeah, so it depends upon your study program. So that's why it's at the moment, it's a little bit easier for those students who are in, say, the first year of study, because they can delay their study further. So those students who were awarded, the 4 students who were awarded under the 2021 round are not going to travel this year, obviously. So they have actually delayed their scholarships until 2022. But in the meantime, they do still need to continue studying. So it just depends upon how it fits in with, the degree. It's very hard to tell because we get applications from so many different degrees and they've all got different structures. But essentially, you can delay your scholarship to a later date as long as it fits in with your degree.
Yep. And in regards to the electives, you mentioned needing to get credit for language and such.
Mm-hmm.
If as a straight law student, my degree doesn't normally permit electives from outside the law college. How is that going to work if I wanted to, say, choose to pick up a language while I was before or even abroad at the time, crediting that?
So as part of your degree, you don't have electives available? Is that
Well,
what you're
I only have
saying?
electives from the college itself, from the law college. No other. I don't think they have much freedom and flexibility to pick electives from other areas of study.
I don't think we've had problems before with law students studying
If
language.
not, that's fine. They've given me a study plan from the uni, and it was very, very strict in how they listed everything originally. But
We definitely
Yeah.
have had law students participate in the program before. Yeah.
Paul, feel free to send it to us in an email. Otherwise, you can actually talk to your course information officer in Kale about the specifics of it. We definitely have had law students on the programs before, and my understanding is that electives, although they recommend that you keep them from your school and college, that you actually can take
you
them from
can
other areas.
yeah. It'd be nice to speak a language before you went somewhere else. Thank you.
Yeah. And we also certainly wouldn't recommend that you try and learn a language and then study in that language. We have had that happen before, and I think it was a bit of a bumpy journey. She did pass with flying colours, but I don't know if my ability to pick up South Korean or Korean would, I'd be able to manage it in a couple of weeks and then study. So, yeah. Any other questions before we wrap it up?
I did
Veronica?
have one question. Yeah, mine was in regards to the elective as well. I actually have had my electives waived because I have a previous degree under my belt. So how would that work in with my study plan? Am I able to, use those electives even though I've been exempt from needing to do any of that?
So Veronica, I'm not sure if I should say this on a recording. I do think that we have had students who've relinquished credit in the past, but I don't think it's recommended. So it might be a conversation you would need to have with the college directly. Yeah. So you want to approach them as well.
Yeah, I'll have a chat. That way it's not recorded. Thank
might
you.
be best. Don't mention my name, Veronica. Don't mention my name.
Oh, I won't. Between us.
And this recording. Any other students have any questions? No? All right. Well, we might wrap it up. So we'll follow through with a couple of things. We'll send you through this presentation and the link to our website, which also has more links just in case you need them. As part of this presentation, Gillian has provided a number of YouTube clips on how to address selection criteria, which I think does go over the STAR method, but we'll put that slide back in anyway. And then what else are we going to do? We'll send you out the invite for Thursday's presentation next week with Gillian that will go through the selection criteria at a more kind of granular level. And then may the force be with you. If you have any questions, let us know. how many people do we have? 3, 6, 9. We've only got 12 people here and we can nominate 10 students. So we're off to a good start. Yeah, and we'll talk to you next week and we'll go from there. We'll provide you with more information.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
everyone. Thanks,
No
Gillian.
worries.
Thank
Thanks so
you.
much, Gillian.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Be in touch.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.